Hello, everybody. Picasso once said, "Such a shame for a painter to paint apples who hates apples." Welcome to Document the Game. I'm Miles Davis, a.k.a. Master Bern, and this is...
I am DTM, that is Delta Tango Mike. Let's start the show.
Yo, this Bone Crusher, and you're watching the Art is King podcast. Cast.
What's up, Dan?
I'm doing great. How are you, Miles?
Doing wonderful, man. Looking forward to today's episode.
Yes, let's get to it. It's about finding your style.
Find the style, all
I
right.
like the quote that you shared with us.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about what you think about that quote and what does it mean for people
Yeah, well...
or artists.
I think it is kind of a shame. It's a double-edged sword, I think, being an artist when you're trying to find your style, right? I'm still finding my style. I've been an artist since I was 5 years old, published nationally at 17. It's an ongoing process. It never ends. And hopefully you never stop learning and you find these influences that help change your vision of what art could be. So when he says, it's such a shame for someone who hates apples to have to paint apples. I'm ad-libbing a little bit, y'all, just so you know. But yeah, to have to paint something you hate all the time, I think is kind of horrible because you're not going to be inspired. You're going to lose that passion. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't learn how to paint apples. So I do think when it comes to your education and finding your style, you do have to do exercises. Say do a still life, but do a still life and make it your own.
Right.
And you really push yourself in new directions. I think it's the only way you can really learn in the long run how to find an original look to some of your work.
All right, so what it means really is that sometimes you don't like drawing certain things.
Right.
And in your case, is still life? Is that
I hated still life. I really did. I hated still life. I hated still life. I like drawing people.
You
But
like-
I have a lot of my students though. They hate doing hands. You know. And
Uh-huh.
so I'm very
Yeah.
methodical.
It's a
Like
lot of work.
I force them to draw hands and learn how to do fingers and just in a sketchbook do a few pages and get warmed up. And then do cartoony hands. You can do anime hands. You can do long
You
fingers.
try different styles, but it's the
yeah.
same thing that you're drawing, so you
Right.
kind of get a feel.
You want to make
for
it
how
become
looks.
muscle memory kind of, right?
And that's why it's a shame that you don't like painting or drawing something, but you force yourself to do that so much so that you get to know it inside and out, and you never have to think about it after that. It's just automatic. When
That's
you
like
need
you're a
it.
professional, right?
Right,
A
and as a
professional is going to learn
professional-
what they need to know. I'm the big yes man. You said that earlier off camera. You're like, you're a yes man. And I was like, I am a yes man. People ask me all the time, can you paint this mural? And I'm like, yes, I can. And then I go right to Google, my assistant, and look up how to do murals on the outdoors or indoors and what kind of paint I need. I look it all up. And then I go teach myself, right?
Right,
Because these are all tools.
Right.
So, but it is a shame if you get stuck doing something that you hate doing. That's a horrible way to spend your life. So, so not that I can't paint apples, but I don't paint apples just to be painting apples.
But through that practice, you end up working the basics and fundamentals enough that when you do start working in that style that you prefer the most, it's already automatic, and you're not trying to find a style and learn at the same time. You're just already just working in your style.
Exactly, yeah. There's a quote I heard, and don't forgive me, I forgot who said this. There was an artist that actually said this one time, and I saw it written somewhere. But it was essentially the fact that you cannot not be contemporary or cannot have your own style on a long enough timeline when you produce enough work. Because your natural hand, your natural instincts are going to play a role in that. If you do it raw without thinking too much about it, you just go after it, I think that you will hopefully start developing your own style on a long enough timeline. It takes time. It's not something you just pick up and do overnight.
So tell us a little bit about your style.
Mine?
Because
Well-
you say you were published at 17.
Right.
Like how does
Nothing
that?
crazy. It was a little editorial cartoon that I was able to do in Ironworks magazine. It was a little like a Harley dude, but he was like a computer nerd, right? So he was all like a little cartoon. But what it was a friend of the family who actually worked for the magazine, or knew a friend of a friend was the magazine, and they knew I was trying to find ways to publish some of my work. I was still living at home. Like I think I was at the junior college, or no, it might have been senior high school maybe. And so I was all excited. I look at it now, it's kind of embarrassing. So y'all don't go look that up or nothing. You probably can't find it, to be honest. I don't think Ironworks is even around anymore as a magazine. But yeah, so that was my cartoony style. I was really into cartoons and comics growing up. And then I got into movies, and I studied fine art in college. And so as I develop my styles, see, I did funky flowers, is what I call these, right? This is one of my styles.
Okay.
And when I do my flowers, it took me time. I decided I want to do flowers, but like I said with the apple, I don't do apples, just do apples. And I'm not going to do flowers just to do flowers. I decided I'm going to cartoon the crap out of these flowers. So that's where all the hard outlines came from. I'm cartooning them.
That's your style.
That was my chosen path at that time. And then as I experiment with that, it starts snowballing into other things. And then my figurative work, I do a lot of spiritual work, so my subject matter versus my aesthetic style are different. But in my artist statement, I always state that I do a lot of modern aesthetics, but with classic subject matter, like spirituality, the human condition, struggle, politics. But then I try to do it in a comic booky style with the painter's flair. So, but I'm talking a lot, man. Tell us about your styles, man. We only got like 10 minutes, like 10 minutes, right?
Well, that's and I think that through your experience, and that's why we asked you about yours, and I'll talk about myself in a minute, is that it takes time. It takes time to find your style and the thing that you like to do, that prefer to do. Right. But it's through that practice that you will get to that point where you do have a very clear and defined style. And it's going to take through that practice to deal with the fundamentals, try different styles, and then find the one style that works for you, or mesh and meld the styles that
I'm
fit.
always meshing.
Yeah.
I always mesh. I'm doing that now. I'm trying to do contemporary art, like Rauschenberg, like big square colors and stuff. And then I'm trying to add faces and add surrealistic elements to those. So I'm trying to mix what I've already done with new paths of experimentation.
Yeah.
So like I said, for me, it's always moving.
Right.
It's never like a solid style, unless you're getting paid millions of bucks and you got to do the same style
Well,
over
of
and
course,
over, and over again,
that's
right?
the job. But that's
There
why,
you go, right.
and that's why you try different styles, because as a professional, if you get to that point where you want to be a professional and want to get paid, you're going to be asked to do different things.
Exactly.
You know, depending on who you're talking to, depending on the number that you're willing to get paid for, they're willing
Correct.
to pay for it, then you're going to have to, that practice is going to help you then handle that business as a professional. So my style developed through time, and I started as a comic book artist. I like comic books. I like art that has a lot of bold lines, a lot of color, a lot of action. Batman is number one. That's the best
big
character
Batman
ever.
I'm Wolverine,
best
man.
Other
I like Wolverine.
Wolverine, he's cool. He's all right.
Sneaky.
All right. So with growing up and reading a lot of comic books, that became the style that I was very tied into, because I like it a lot. But as time went on, I found artists like Alex Ross and Simon Bisley, Frazetta, and Boris Vallejo, and so then that's more of the realistic, the super muscular, defined artwork, and then there was an artist, and his name is Simon Bisley. He meshes like the comic book and the realistic together.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, ooh, that's it. That's what I want. And so as time's gone on, I practiced all those different things. And I got to the point where I am similar to this way, where there's a lot of bold lines, a lot of color, and it's kind of a mesh in between those two things. Sometimes really cartoony, sometimes it's really realistic, but it's always around that same kind of things that I like. And that's where I developed my style. But it took a lot of practice, and I did try to understand the fundamentals of anatomy and perspective and composition, so that your art then has the style, then is able to talk about something, have a message, or have something that you can pick up on and understand what's happening.
Right, exactly.
That's good.
I couldn't agree more.
So what should we do when trying to find your style? What are some of the, I know that I mentioned fundamentals and you just mentioned trying things out, trying different styles. What are some of the suggestions that we can give somebody who's trying to find their style?
Well, one I would say is, especially my beginning students, the ones that are like 10 years and below, I learned a lot.
That's beginner?
Well, for me it was. I started when I was 5, right? And by the time I was 10, I was taking private lessons. I actually teach private lessons to some students, one-on-one. And I just told you about one off camera, about 10 years old. And one of the things I always say is find something you enjoy. You like comic books. I learned by tracing Spider-Man. Like, I used to trace Spider-Man like it was going out of style. What was cool about that is that Spider-Man is basically like a mannequin. There's no capes, there's no iron suit, nothing like that. You take away his whole costume, you have like a little muscle mannequin. And so what I started doing over time was just tracing and learning that. And then I started changing one arm, changing one leg. And that was my initial education of my own volition, going through and doing that kind of stuff. So I really enjoy, when you're first starting out, you have all kinds of tools at your disposal. Trace a little bit, I would say, like I mentioned earlier, with the hands. If you don't like drawing hands, nobody's going to see it. Just take time in your studio. Google some images, get some books. Try to copy it without tracing it in your sketchbook over and over and over and over again. And I'd say do like 4 or 5 pages of like 5 hands per page. You'd be surprised what sticks. You mean I think it's sticking, but it'll stick. So I'm very methodical with that.
Yeah.
That's the way I do it.
And okay. So let's break it down to simple to-do lists. So one is draw the things that you don't necessarily like to draw. Right. That's it. Just do it over and over and over and over again.
Right, which would be very boring and monotonous. I understand that. So put on some good tunes. Put on some good tunes
Have
in the
some
background.
music. Correct.
Yeah,
Right. We'll get into do the things that help. So another thing is habits. Building a habit that gets
Yes.
into the mode.
Yes.
So the music or movies. I like movies. I like Just Judy. I
Sure.
like different things that
You
are
like Judge Judy?
that are extra hype. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then that gets you into that zone.
Right.
Right.
I see
Okay.
that,
Like
sure.
it. Okay. Go ahead.
So get in your zone. I actually have a separated art space, which I'm fortunate to have that. But some artists don't. I used to go to the kitchen table, but my family and my wife knows, like, if I'm in my creative mood, like, don't bug me, like I'm focusing. So it's and it takes that focus. So stay focused. Try to find a quiet place, a place where you can be yourself and not worry about what people are doing or watching you or whatever, and experiment and play, like I said, in your sketchbook.
And then trace. It's okay to trace.
Yeah, it's not a
Go
bad
ahead
thing.
and trace. It's all right. Just don't post and talk about how you just made something new.
Yeah, true.
It's a tracing for you to train and then and follow the lines that somebody has already created so that you can get a feel for it and get past that little hashing unless that's the style, But,
Right, yeah.
But you want to smooth, clean lines and flow so that you can get used to what that's like and then start working it on your own in different artwork. And
Right.
you just have that muscle memory, so it's okay to trace.
Right, okay,
Tracing
trace.
is happening.
Also, if you're going to experiment, say you're doing a bunch of hands, maybe do it with different mediums. Like maybe use an ink pen, maybe use a pencil, maybe use some charcoal. That way it keeps it fresh for you. So maybe you're drawing the same hand shape. Let's say I'm drawing that, right? You can draw that like 5 times, but do it with different mediums in your sketchbook.
I've seen this other exercise where, and this will be the last thing that we talk about.
Sure.
This other exercise where you do the hand gesture for 10 minutes, then do another one where it's 5 minutes, and then the 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So that way
Your hand gets quick.
That's right. You're trying to get in as many lines in that time, but it still keeps the amount of lines low. So you're gonna have to then start figuring out exactly how many lines it's gonna take to get a particular
Right.
drawing.
I'm a big fan of basic shapes. So every time I have a beginning student, I would say, you don't like drawing this, like a hand's complicated. Draw the basic shapes first, then add detail.
Very good.
A lot of people will start off drawing like one part of a picture and they do all this infinite detail and they get way over here and they screw it up, right? They're like, oh man, they tear it up and throw it away. But it's, it's because you spent too much time. If you laid out the whole thing with the basic shapes and building details slowly, that exercise is great for doing gestural marks.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're doing. It teaches you to do the basic shapes first.
Basic shapes. That's good.
So,
all right. Well, cool. Well, thank you for spending some time with us here today.
thank you.
I am Delta Tango Mike,
Miles Davis, a.k.a. Massive Burn.
and find us at hashtag Document the Game. We are here every week. Leave us a comment. Let us know your feedback and your suggestions on how you can find your art style that is going to carry you to your career.
Yeah. Big house on the hill. Earn it. Gotta do the work, baby. All
Talk to y'all later.
right, thank you.